This is a developing situation that has potentially altered the trajectory of a conflict the entire world has been watching with bated breath. Moments ago, breaking information emerged regarding the volatile standoff between the United States and the Islamic Republic of Iran, a development that shifts the narrative from the brink of kinetic warfare to the delicate, shadowy world of high-stakes diplomacy. For weeks, the rhetoric has been escalating, the military assets have been moving into position, and the global community has been bracing for what many feared was inevitable. But tonight, the story has changed. Donald Trump has just made a definitive statement that cuts through the noise of war drums, asserting that the United States and Iran are currently engaged in active talks specifically designed to avert a military escalation. This is not a rumor. This is a direct declaration that challenges the prevailing assumption that Washington and Tehran were on a collision course. The significance of this cannot be overstated. Just hours ago, analysts were discussing target lists and red lines. Now, we are looking at the possibility of a diplomatic off-ramp that few saw coming. This announcement has sent shockwaves through the Pentagon, the State Department, and foreign capitals across the Middle East, forcing a rapid reassessment of U.S. strategy in the region. What makes this update so critical right now is the timing. We are living in a moment where a single miscalculation in the Persian Gulf or a rogue drone strike could ignite a conflagration that draws in global powers. The atmosphere has been thick with the anticipation of conflict. Yet, this new revelation suggests that while the public was seeing the fist, the hand was being extended behind closed doors. We are seeing a classic, yet dangerous game of brinkmanship, where the line between total war and sudden negotiation is razor thin. If these talks are real, and if they are successful, we are witnessing a pivot that could save countless lives and stabilize the global economy. But if this is merely a stalling tactic or a misinterpretation of signals, the fallout could be even more severe than before. To understand why this specific announcement is shaking the foundations of foreign policy circles tonight, we have to look past the headline. This is not just about a phone call or a meeting. It is about the fundamental security architecture of the Middle East. The claim that we are talking implies that channels of communication, likely back channels that have been dormant or frozen, are now active. This raises immediate, urgent questions. Who is talking? What is being offered? And perhaps, most hauntingly, what was the specific threat that brought both sides to the table at this 11th hour? The answers to these questions are currently unfolding, and what we find out next could redefine the American presidency and the balance of power in the Middle East for a generation. As we move away from the initial shock of the breaking news, we must settle into the deeper reality of what this means. This is where the story shifts from a flash on your screen to a complex, multi-layered geopolitical thriller that has been playing out in the shadows for decades. To truly grasp the weight of Trump's statement, we have to understand the pressure cooker that is U.S.-Iran relations. This is a relationship defined by 40 years of silence, punctuated only by threats, sanctions, and proxy wars. When an American leader says, "We are talking to Tehran," it is an anomaly. It goes against the grain of established diplomatic inertia. It suggests that something shifted behind the scenes. A lever was pulled that the public never saw. Consider the context of the last few months. We have seen a steady, grinding escalation. Tankers seized in the Strait of Hormuz, drone attacks on oil infrastructure, and localized skirmishes that felt like rehearsals for a main event. The military-industrial complex was gearing up. News networks were running simulations of what an air campaign would look like. The psychological preparation for war was already underway in the minds of the American public. And then, abruptly, the script flips. This sudden transition from fire and furiness to dialogue is a hallmark of a specific style of disruption. But it also indicates that the intelligence community may have picked up on something that made de-escalation the only viable option. This brings us to the concept of the shadow war. For years, the conflict between Washington and Tehran has been fought in the gray zones: cyber attacks, espionage, and covert operations. It is a war of signals. When Trump announces that talks are happening to stop military escalation, he is effectively bringing the shadow war into the light. He is acknowledging that the kinetic option, the actual shooting war, was close enough to necessitate a direct intervention. This admission is chilling because it confirms just how close the precipice really was. It forces us to ask, what did the satellite imagery show yesterday? What intercepts did the NSA capture that accelerated this push for dialogue? The mechanism of these talks is likely as fascinating as the outcome they seek to achieve. Historically, the US and Iran do not speak directly. They use intermediaries, the Swiss, the Omanis, sometimes officials from the European Union. These are the messengers of peace, who carry handwritten notes or encrypted verbal messages between hostile capitals. However, the phrasing used in this latest update suggests a more direct engagement or a more robust channel than usual. If the administration has bypassed the usual diplomatic filters to speak directly to Iranian decision makers, that represents a massive break from protocol and carries with it immense risk. One wrong word, one mistranslated phrase in a high-tension environment, and the talks don't just fail, they accelerate the very war they were meant to prevent. We must also consider the psychology of the leadership involved. On one side, you have a U.S. administration that prioritizes strength and leverage, often using the threat of overwhelming force to bring opponents to the table. On the other, you have a revolutionary regime in Tehran that prides itself on resistance and views compromise as weakness. For these two diametrically opposed worldviews to find a common language, the stakes must be existential. It suggests that both sides looked into the abyss of a potential conflict and realized that the cost, be it in blood, treasure, or political stability, was simply too high to pay. This is the rational actor theory in real-time application. But in the Middle East, rationality is often held hostage by ideology. The reaction from the region tells its own story, one that is often missed in the immediate rush of domestic reporting. In capitals like Riyadh, Tel Aviv, and Abu Dhabi, this news is likely being met with a complex mixture of relief and anxiety. Relief, because no one in the region wants to be the battlefield for a superpower conflict. Anxiety, because when the US and Iran talk, America's traditional allies worry they are being sidelined or that a grand bargain is being cut at their expense. This diplomatic maneuver by Trump ripples out, affecting oil prices, security alliances, and the intricate balance of power that holds the Middle East together. The silence from these allied capitals right now is deafening. They are waiting to see if this is a breakthrough or a breakdown in slow motion. Furthermore, we have to look at the human element of this story, which is often buried under the jargon of escalation and containment. Right now, there are thousands of U.S. service members stationed across the CENTCOM region, in Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, and at sea on carrier strike groups. For them, and for their families back home, this isn't abstract geopolitics. This is the difference between a deployment and a combat mission. The statement that talks are underway to avert military escalation is a lifeline to those families. It validates their fears that war was imminent, but offers a glimmer of hope that their loved ones won't be sent into the line of fire. It grounds this high-flying diplomatic drama in the very real beating hearts of American citizens. But let's pause and look at the skepticism that naturally accompanies such a bold claim. History is littered with peace talks that were merely smokescreens for rearmament. Is this a genuine diplomatic opening? Or is it a delay tactic allowing one side to move assets into better positions? Skeptics in the intelligence community will be analyzing every syllable of this statement and cross-referencing it with movement on the ground. Are the missile batteries in Iran standing down? Have the U.S. naval destroyers halted their advance? Words are one thing, but in international relations, trust is non-existent. Verification is everything. The coming days will be a test of whether the reality on the ground matches the optimism of the podium. There's also the economic angle that touches every American household. The mere suggestion of military escalation with Iran sends oil markets into a frenzy. A war would likely close the Strait of Hormuz, the jugular vein of the global energy supply, through which a third of the world's liquefied natural gas and a massive percentage of oil passes. The spike in gas prices would be immediate and catastrophic for the economy. By announcing these talks, Trump is also attempting to calm the markets. It is a signal to Wall Street as much as it is to Tehran. Stability is the goal. This intertwining of economic survival and national security is the engine driving these events. The administration knows that a war would not just be a military burden, but an economic disaster. As we peel back the layers, we start to see the immense complexity of what talking actually entails. What are the terms? Usually, the U.S. demands a total cessation of uranium enrichment and a halt to ballistic missile testing. Iran usually demands the lifting of crippling sanctions and security guarantees. The gap between these demands is a canyon. Bridging it requires not just talking, but creative, unprecedented diplomacy. It implies that perhaps, just perhaps, there's a new proposal on the table, something that hasn't been reported yet, something that offers a face-saving exit for both sides. The mystery of this deal, or discussion, is what will keep analysts awake tonight. It is crucial to remember that this development does not happen in a vacuum. It follows a pattern of pressure and release that has defined the last decade. However, the intensity is different this time. The weaponry is more advanced, the time to target is faster, and the political polarization in both countries is at an all-time high. A move toward peace is politically risky for leadership in both Washington and Tehran. Hardliners on both sides thrive on conflict. They view negotiation as betrayal. By announcing these talks, Trump is taking a political gamble, betting that the American public is weary of endless wars and will reward a deal-maker over a war-maker. It is a calculation that places a heavy bet on his own ability to navigate the most treacherous diplomatic waters on Earth. As the hours unfold, we will be watching for corroboration from the Iranian side. Their state media is notoriously controlled, often broadcasting a narrative of defiance, even while their diplomats are cutting deals in Geneva or Vienna. If Tehran confirms these talks, even obliquely, it validates the U.S. claim. If they deny it, it throws everything into chaos, suggesting a disconnect that could be even more dangerous than silence. We are in the fog of peace, a period where information is contradictory, motives are opaque, and the truth is the most valuable commodity.